Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We are setting out to uncover the hidden engines of startup success. We're going to completely bypass the typical surface-level business advice and go straight to the source, the hidden mindset that truly drives successful entrepreneurs. Because before a company can ever exist in the real world, it has to be built right inside the mind. Looking at the startup world, it really forces us to ask this core question. Why do some people build these incredible, world-changing businesses while others just hit a wall and give up after the very first obstacle? Is it just raw intelligence? Do the winners just have way more money in the bank, better industry connections? Or is it maybe just blind, dumb luck?
All right, let's dive into this. Because while having a ton of cash and a lucky break certainly doesn't hurt, the reality is far, far more interesting than the myth. The absolute biggest differentiator between a thriving startup and a failed one usually isn't about resources at all. It's the founder's psychology. It's their mindset, their emotional strength, and exactly how they choose to take action when the pressure is really on.
Section 1. The Growth Mindset Advantage. Seeing opportunities instead of roadblocks. Think of this growth mindset as literally the foundational operating system of the startup brain. Without it, the whole system just crashes. Imagine two different minds looking at the exact same massive brick wall. The fixed mindset immediately shuts down, saying, well, that won't work, or it's way too risky, someone else already did it. But the growth mindset, they look at that exact same wall and ask, okay, how can I make it work? What can I do differently here? What's the hidden opportunity? It is a complete fundamental shift in perspective that honestly changes everything. So, a growth mindset is basically this deeply held belief that your skills aren't just set in stone. They're developed through effort, through learning, and honestly, through sheer persistence. And for a startup founder, this is absolutely vital. Why? Well, because you have to learn constantly. Today, you might be designing a product. Tomorrow, you're negotiating with suppliers. Next week, boom, you are suddenly the marketing director. Literally, no one starts knowing the whole shebang, so that relentless willingness to learn new skills becomes a massive, undeniable competitive advantage. Section 2. Redefining fear and risk. Moving forward despite uncertainty. Now, this brings us to the deeply messy, often uncomfortable, emotional reality of entrepreneurship. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of losing money, or just looking totally foolish in front of your peers. And, most people avoid starting businesses simply to avoid feeling these exact emotions. But here's the truth. The most legendary founders in the world aren't magically immune to anxiety. They feel every single one of these fears too, often while running on way too much coffee. But instead of freezing, they operate on this incredibly powerful psychological reframe. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's taking action while fear is present. Think about it. If you sit around waiting until you feel completely 100% confident before starting, you're probably never going to start. Action doesn't follow confidence. Confidence usually arrives after you take action, not before.
There's this major myth out there that entrepreneurs are these adrenaline junkies who just love taking wild risks. Actually, imagine two people standing at the edge of a really fast-moving river. The blind jumper, they leap right in, gambling recklessly without even checking the depth. But the river tester, they study the water, they check the currents, they find the absolute safest path across. Successful founders are the river testers. They actually don't enjoy risk at all. They just know how to manage it way better than anyone else.
So how do they do it? They shrink that terrifying, abstract risk down through really concrete testing methodologies. Before launching some massive final product, they just create rough prototypes. Before opening 100 retail locations, they test just one single market. Before blowing their entire budget on advertising, they run small, super inexpensive campaigns. They just collect data, taking those scary unknown risks and turning them into known quantities. Section 3. Resilience through deep purpose. Surviving the inevitable setbacks. Because let's be totally honest here, completely failed products and brutally rejected investor pitches aren't just a possibility in the startup world, they are completely guaranteed it's going to happen. But when those inevitable disasters strike, resilient founders don't just throw in the towel. They immediately ask themselves, okay, what can I learn from this? They entirely refuse to view a setback as a permanent failure, instantly reframing it as a critical piece of data that shows them exactly how to improve their very next move. But to maintain that crazy level of mental toughness, you really need the right fuel. Now, money absolutely matters. It's a motivator, for sure, but money tends to be a pretty short-term focus. What happens when the profits dip and things get incredibly hard? That is exactly when you need deep purpose.
solving a mission you deeply, genuinely care about, whether that's improving healthcare, fixing education, or truly helping people, is the only thing that gives you the long-term emotional energy required to survive the darkest days of building a business.
Section 4. Empathy and Human Behavior. Understanding what people really buy.
All right, up to now, we focused a lot on the internal stuff, the founder's resilience, but now we really need to look outward. Because the startup isn't just about products, it's entirely about people. And that all anchors on empathy, truly understanding another person's thoughts, emotions, and needs. This seemingly simple mental shift changes absolutely everything about how you build a company. Instead of selfishly asking, what cool product do I want to build? An empathetic founder stops and asks, wait, what specific problem does my customer actually need solved?
Because here is the real hidden secret about consumer behavior. People do not buy products. They just don't. They buy solutions. They buy convenience, status, confidence. Businesses that root their entire model in really understanding these deep human motivations are going to easily, consistently outperform competitors who are just blindly focused purely on technical features. Now, to execute that effectively, you absolutely need the confidence to act on your vision and just launch. But overconfidence, that's a massive trap. That's when you assume you're the smartest person in the room, you start ignoring customer feedback, and you totally stop testing your assumptions. The absolute best founders somehow balance the bold confidence required to launch with the deep, deep humility required to actually learn from their mistakes.
Section 5. Consistency and humble confidence. The compound effect of small actions.
We really need to demystify this kind of toxic idea that business success requires some massive overnight breakthrough. Because honestly, it's actually all about the compound effect. It's sending just one more email when you're dead tired, making one more sales call, tweaking the product to make it just 1% better today, learning one tiny new skill. These actions feel completely insignificant in the moment, but over months and years, they snowball into absolutely remarkable, life-changing results.
So, the absolutely crucial point is this. Consistency is greater than talent, intelligence, and luck combined. And here is the hardest truth to swallow. Most entrepreneurs don't fail because they aren't smart enough or because they're incapable. They fail simply because they stop too soon. They literally quit right before the compound effect has a chance to work its magic.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to burn this thought into your memory. Business success begins in the mind long before it ever appears in the marketplace. Yes, a startup begins as an idea, but it only survives and grows through mindset, persistence, continuous learning, and courageous action. The single most valuable asset in any startup isn't the software or the product or the funding. It is the founder's psychology. Which leaves us with one final lingering thought. Every single legendary company in history once started as nothing more than a passing idea in someone's mind. The only difference is that they decided to act. So what idea will you